going too fast. I'm taking three.
I'm going for the St. Louis now.
Oh no!
Son of a bitch.
You get your two?
Yeah.
Welcome back to the channel, everyone. Thotgor here, of course, and today we are going to take a look at a battle in the Nurnberg. So you can see we are on north, and on my Nurnberg, you may recall a few patches ago they changed the Nurnberg, gave it another hull option that upgrades the AA. So that's the hull we're looking at today on the Nurnberg, and of course there's no aircraft carrier in the battle. Oh well. Anyway, today they also did release the Scharnhorst in the premium shop, which is fantastic. The Scharnhorst is quite a great little battleship. Not, not too shabby at all at what it does, which is basically destroy cruisers, like nothing else really. It's pretty fantastic. The pricing on it, wow, I hate the pricing on it. It's the premium package comes with that special flag for the Scharnhorst. And that special flag doesn't actually have any bonuses on it, which is kind of weird. At least I don't think it has any bonuses. Obviously, correct me if I'm wrong, but it just seems weird to throw that in to the premium package if it doesn't have a bonus on it. You should be able to get it, with whatever package. But whatever, that's just my gripe. Anyway, on north in the Nuremberg. Now this battle was fairly tragic. Well, you'll see what I'm talking about when we get to the end. I wasn't too thrilled at the end of this battle, but still, it was some decent gameplay. It just, it all fell apart there at the end, and it really turned out to be quite tragic. So, based on where I spawned and the fact that it's, not domination, I don't have to worry about getting in and capping any points, I do decide to come over here where the sea cap would normally be, and just kind of poke around the little landmass over here and see if anything does end up coming around this little island. And if so, I'm just going to go ahead and bombard it right away. You'll notice I have high explosive loaded up because I fully expected it to be an enemy destroyer. We have 4 enemy destroyers on the team, and obviously those guys are going to be pretty crucial to any sort of victory or any sort of major play that the enemy team attempts to make. So we are going to have to do something about those ships as quickly as we possibly can. Nothing ends up popping up around the corner here. You can see I'm turning away now. Not going to go beyond this corner. I do not recommend going beyond that corner in anything but a destroyer, and even at this early stage in the battle here, I still wouldn't recommend doing it necessarily in a destroyer. So we are not going to be the ones who do that right now. You can see we're just going to circle back, try and get a few shots off on this enemy New Mexico, I believe. We just need to open up the distance between ourselves and this island, and then we should be able to shoot over the landmass and land a few shots into the New Mexico. I do still have high explosive loaded up. Armor piercing would still be a nice option here at this point, given that the shells are most likely going to, if you can get your shells to land on the deck of the New Mexico, they probably are going to do a bunch of damage. Anyway, enemy destroyer pops up out of the center channel where B would normally be, so we are going to start making this target our priority. We'll switch quickly over to the player, and unfortunately for this guy, just so happens that he grounded himself right in front of a number of my allies. So we're just going to go ahead and lay into this enemy destroyer. Luckily for us as well, it's a Liu Yang. So this is a tier 8 destroyer. It's the premium, what is it, the Taiwanese? Premium Taiwanese destroyer, I think, maybe. Could be Chinese. Not 100% sure. But anyway, that player is gone. We get a kill on him, and that's fantastic. So we have another enemy destroyer here as well that we're going to have to deal with. It's an enemy Mitsuki, so we do want to be careful about this player, right? And in this battle, in this match, I was really kicking myself for having the AA hull on, because there were so many instances during this battle that I really could have benefited from having the acoustic sonar ability, but luckily, whatever, managed to deal with it. As well, keep in mind when you do get the upgraded AA hull, you also lose 1 torpedo launcher or rather 2 torpedo launchers, 1 on each side, port and starboard, on the Nuremberg as well, so that's why I only have the 1 launcher at this time. The enemy Mitsuki is doing his best to avoid my torpedoes, and you can see basically did fairly close, but did a nice job there on avoiding those torpedoes. Pops the smoke, and I can no longer see him. I know he's right there, so we're just going to line up some shots. There we go, managed to take him out, and there's my second kill for the game, so fantastic, not too bad. We're going to try and avoid in a collision here with the friendly Oba, so we'll just reduce throttle and try and get away from this. And we do manage to pull it off without actually, scratching any of the paint, so that's fantastic. We switch over to armor piercing, and now we're going to lay into the enemy Cleveland. We also have to deal with our allied New Orleans there attempting to plow into us, but no big deal. Managed to get out of that situation as well, and just continue to put armor piercing downrange at the Cleveland. I was hoping just to land a few lucky citadel shots, hopefully, and do a bit of damage there to the player. We do see an enemy Hipper off in the distance. We also see an enemy, I believe that's a Warspite as well. So, there are some pretty big ships around. We do need to be fairly careful. If we take a look at the mini-map, we do see sort of a smaller battle happening on the east side. We see some of our allies are making an attempt of a push over on the west, and there doesn't seem to be too many enemy ships over there to oppose it. Most of our ships, my allied ships, are grouped up here in the middle. So the ideal situation here, obviously, is if we can all, as a group, work together to push through the channel. Either through the channel or over onto the west side and push around that way, right? Hopefully just to keep the pressure on the enemies. We do need to keep in mind though that, again, based on what we know on the minimap, there doesn't seem to be too many enemies over there in the west, so if we do push through, it'll probably mean that the enemies are going to be able to push through on the east. Anyway, we do have an enemy destroyer popping up, so none of that really matters because we do need to deal with this enemy destroyer as quickly as we possibly can. It's an Ognavoy, so the tier 6 Russian destroyer. I did not enjoy that destroyer whatsoever. It was not fun. It was just the fact that it only had the 2 turrets, and it was really easy for those turrets to become incapacitated. Now, I was playing the Ognavoy, was it before they made the changes to the turrets? I can't quite remember, to be honest with you now. But anyway, it just seemed, that the turrets would go, you'd usually lose 1 in battle, and then you're just reduced to 1 turret. And it's like, oh, damn, I've got all this speed, I've got really, really short range torpedoes and only 1 gun that has 2 cannons, so it wasn't the best destroyer. I was very, very happy to get out of the Ognavoy and into the Kiev. There we go, managed to hit the Ognavoy with one of my torpedoes, devastating strike, get the kill, so that's my 3rd kill, so fantastic, not too bad. We do have an enemy Hipper, I believe, off in the distance. Clear the barrels of the high explosive, and we're going to load up our armor piercing now, because we can still do really good damage against the Hipper here with the armor piercing. The problem with the Hipper there is going to be the angling of the enemy ship, right? With that angle, we're probably not going to do so great. So we're going to switch targets. We're going to find something else that will do better damage too. We do see this enemy battleship coming out here, and I was pretty concerned about this whole thing. I didn't actually realize until now that I was so close to this enemy New Mexico. I didn't think the enemy New Mexico was going to be coming through the channel like this. So I was a little concerned because obviously in a broadside, right, to the New Mexico is able to fire in 6 cannons at me, which is not so great at all because those shots can come in and do massive damage. Luckily, I'm able to avoid some of that damage just by turning out of it, which wasn't, too bad. It was really more luck than anything. Basically, New Mexico pops up. I turn to port because I freak out a little. I load up my high explosive because, the New Mexico's coming bow on to me. There's not going to be a whole lot I'm going to be able to do with the armor piercing at this angles. So at the very least, with the high explosive, maybe I can set some fires and get those fires burning continuously, at least, do some damage that way. The enemy New Mexico is presenting more of a broadside now, so it does open up the opportunity to get some armor piercing loaded up. And you can see, in fact, I've got my armor piercing loaded up now that we're clearing the barrels of the high explosive. So hopefully we're going to start landing some more shots into this enemy New Mexico. And obviously that's one of the biggest criticisms of the German cruisers are the lackluster damage of the HE. It's very true, the HE does really suck, I guess, in the German cruisers, but the armor piercing is spectacular. The majority of the time you're going to be firing your armor piercing anyway, so it doesn't really matter to me anyway. I don't really, it doesn't bother me. I do just fine with my armor piercing, thank you. We do some damage here to the enemy New Mexico, doing some significant damage to the enemy New Mexico as well, and getting lucky in that the enemy New Mexico isn't actually focusing on us, and this of course is because we're not the closest target to the enemy New Mexico. We do have a friendly Cleveland who's right in there in the enemy New Mexico's face. Shots go in and do manage to take out the enemy New Mexico, and there we go, we're on for 4 kills now, which isn't too bad, and we're up to about 51,000 damage. The Nurnberg is really, really a great cruiser at tier 6. I really enjoy her. The Königsberg which came before the Nuremberg, is also an excellent cruiser at tier 5. You just have to know how to play them properly, right? Like, if you notice in this battle, I'm always sort of staying at distance because, you know, I really can't afford to let enemy ships get too many shots in on me. And in addition, you know, I'm really always maneuvering around, never really sailing in a straight line, unless, you know, I'm making a mistake, obviously, in tunnel vision, much like I was doing with the enemy New Mexico. But like I said, we just got lucky with the enemy New Mexico, and you can make these situations for yourself, right? Just as long as you're recognizing where your allied ships are, where the enemy ships are, and just sort of doing some basic, making some basic assumptions in hopes that the enemy is going to be focused on your ally rather than yourself. And I know that you know, is a little harsh, I suppose, but hit point conservation and hit point sharing as well, right? We're all on a team. We all have a certain number of hit points all added up together, so we're trying to share it. Ideally, you'd want to spread that the damage out amongst those hit points, right? Keep everyone as alive if possible. Anyway, searching around, looking for our next target. Not 100% sure what we're going to be firing at this point in time. So we'll take a look at the minimap. We do see that there is still an enemy battleship, it looks like, over there on the east. We have an enemy battleship, obviously, here in front of us that we're putting a few shots in. We have an enemy cruiser over here on the west as well. It's an enemy hipper. Looks like the allies might be able to deal with this, but you know, maybe get a few shots in as well. And taking a look at the overall point situation, it does look like we're doing pretty decently at this point in time, right? As long as we don't screw too many things up, we should be able to pull victory out of this battle, which would be ideal. Another enemy destroyer does pop up here, so we're going to quickly try and get some shots into this player and try and get this player gone. This, of course, is the last enemy destroyer, so if we can get the player gone, that would be fantastic. We won't have to worry about dealing with this enemy destroyer any longer. Unfortunately for myself, this enemy destroyer is a little smarter, I guess, or maybe even a little luckier than the other two destroyers, because immediately, you know, takes the shots that I put into him, turns away, using that little island as cover is exactly what he's doing right now. Turns away, and, you know, I lose total contact and just can't get can't manage to get him. There he does. There he goes. He pops up once again, so we can see him now, and we can see that that's exactly what he's done, right? Looking at where he is on the minimap, as well as, you know, where he is in front of us, he just sailed right to the south. He wasn't willing to tangle with, you know, an enemy-like cruiser here. It's just not going to go well for him. We have the enemy Cleveland coming into play now, so we do clear the barrels of the high explosive. We can see torpedoes coming in from the enemy Benson, so we're going to try to avoid these torpedoes if at all possible, just line ourselves on them, and at the same time, of course, continue to put fires in, or continue to fire upon the enemy Cleveland. If we can get this player gone, this will go a long ways in helping us potentially gain victory, right? The enemies only have 4 ships remaining, 2 battleships, this Cleveland and their Benson, versus, of course, our 3 cruisers and our 2 battleships. The problem, of course, for us is that our 2 battleships are out of position at this point in time. If we take a look at the minimap, we can see that, you know, they're not all the way down to the southeast, but they are pretty far down in the southeast, right? And this is really affecting us at this point in time, because right now I'm the only player who is within range of even engaging any of the enemies, and this is not a good situation to find yourself in, you know, this late into the battle. In the meantime, of course, I did earn myself a nice Confederate medal, so that wasn't too bad at all, and I've switched over to the high explosive, because again, going straight onto the Cleveland like this, my armor piercing is most likely not going to do a whole lot of damage, and with my high explosive, at the very least, I have the option of potentially lighting some fires, and we can see that I have in fact lit a fire that is going to stay. He's not going to be able to, the player's not going to be able to put that one out, so that's pretty fantastic. And the player is also, you know, turning into us now, so this opens up the possibility for armor piercing to come in and finish him off. But we can see allied shots go in and finish the player off, so okay, whatever. You're probably sitting there thinking, damn it, you know, another opportunity lost for that Kraken. Don't worry. We'll explain that one when we get to it. But anyway, circling around, I've grouped up with the enemies now, and I'm really hoping that these guys are going to follow me in at this point in time, because we really need to push, right? Even though we have a pretty significant lead at this point in time, the enemy battleships, who apparently were also just hiding out in the back, at least these guys have decided, you know, now is the time to push, and they are in fact pushing in. So we have to do something here if, you know, we want to win. We can't just run away from the situation. That's not going to help anyone. So I've got this enemy Nagawa Nagato, sorry, off on the port side of the ship. We do have high explosive on the way out to the player. I was hoping to set a few flyers and then switch over to the armor piercing. Looking at the Nagato as well, we can tell that the Nagato does not have the final hull upgrade on her. You know, obviously by the smokestack there, you can tell that this is the stock hull on the Nagato. So with the stock hull, you could actually do some pretty decent damage with the armor piercing. And I'm surprised that I didn't switch over to the armor piercing, that I'm actually sticking with the high explosive, but whatever. I mean, you know, didn't want, I don't know what was going through my mind. Oh well. We do a bit of damage there to the Nagato, turn away, and we have another enemy battleship to deal with here as well. So we're going to try to do something to the player. This is a Warspite. So Warspite's a pretty tough old bird here as well. We are switching up to our armor piercing because I can get some nice damage here in with the armor piercing from the Nurnberg, as long as I'm able to land shots onto the deck of the onto the deck of the Warspite, sorry. And you can see the first few salvos go in and do in fact do some significant damage, right? About 2,300 in the first salvo, 4,300 in the second salvo, and then the third salvo is already going in and does a bit more damage there as well. 2,000 something, so not too bad at all, right? You can see how quickly with the armor piercing that this damage can start adding up. So hopefully we're going to be able to take down this enemy Warspite here, and then we can start focusing the last two enemy ships. I switch over to the high explosive because again the Warspite is now presenting a not so great angle, right? So I don't need you know, to take the chance on shots going in and not doing damage, because I really wanted the Kraken, but wasn't meant to be. Allied finishes them off. Fantastic. We only have two enemy ships remaining: enemy battleship, enemy destroyer. Enemy battleship's on full health, Nagato's on full health, and the enemy Benson, you know, isn't necessarily on full health, but does have a decent and good chunk of health. So the main thing we want to do here is play this one smart, realize that the victory is ours to lose, and hopefully be able to pull off something here. Something respectable anyway. So you can see the Benson is doing some evasive maneuvers off in the distance, so we are going to start firing in on the Benson. I of course at this point in time am at a disadvantage, right? Because the targets are in front of me, I'm only able to fire one of my turrets at these enemy targets, or at these enemy ships, while sailing towards them and closing the distance. So this is not necessarily an ideal situation. The enemy Benson has gone out of sight. We see just popped up there once again. I do start focusing on the enemy Nagato, because the enemy Nagato is a pretty easy target to hit, or so I thought. And at the very least, again, with the high explosive loaded up that I have now, maybe set a few fires to the player and get that player gone. In the meantime, the enemy Benson did manage to take out one of my allied cruisers, which really sucks. You can see another one of my allied cruisers here in front of me. What is it? The New Orleans, I believe, also on pretty low health, so that's not so great. I myself is on about half health and suddenly have gone full retard, apparently. And you can see I'm now driving in a straight line, essentially, at the enemy Nagato. So this isn't so great. My plan in all of this was to do some zigzags. You can see I'm kind of doing zigzags. Get to the island, get behind the island, and use it as cover. That was my plan. So shots are coming in from the enemy Nagato. No, finishes me off. This is a Nuremberg at the end of the day, you know, no armor whatsoever, and as it turns out, didn't play it smart. No. Anyway, hopefully my allies will be able to. I mean, we do still have two allied battleships here, or sorry, one allied battleship and one allied cruiser going. Maybe we'll be able to pull something off. Who knows? Again, it was ours to lose, and right at the end, you know, we just fumbled the whole thing. It was tragedy. But like a train wreck, it's very hard to look away from these sorts of situations. So I didn't actually end up leaving the battle. I was sort of captivated with what was happening. Sort of thinking to myself, well, I never, well, I guess I should, you know, shouldn't think never, shouldn't say never thought it was possible, because this is Warships after all. But still, didn't think it could be possible. But here we go. So the enemy Fuso is obviously on a collision course for the enemy Nagato. Isn't great, isn't so great. I mean, the enemy Nagato just shot his main guns from the bow, right? So this would be an ideal situation for the enemy, or sorry, for my allied Fuso to turn and cross the T on the enemy Nagato, because we know that the Nagato has a citadel in the bow that you can hit pretty easily, and hopefully, you know, do a bunch of damage there. At the same time, you know, I was looking at this and just screaming at the, at the player to fire his guns at the enemy Benson, right? because you're a Fuso and he's going bow on. I know that your rear guns can't fire forward at that enemy Nagato, but they definitely can fire at the enemy Benson here, and we know that the enemy Benson is definitely firing torpedoes at this time, right? We just don't see it because this player doesn't have vigilance, I believe it's called, so we just don't see it happening. So shots go out, manage to take out the enemy Benson, fantastic, but it's too late at this point in time. Torpedoes are on the way. Benson was able to fire 2 full spreads of torpedoes in that time. We can see the enemy Nagato, you know, this player played it safe and did some great angling by presenting the bow and then turning and presenting the stern. Takes out our allied Fuso here, and it's gone. So now we just have the enemy the allied New Orleans to take on the enemy Nagato. And I don't know how many of you know anything about the New Orleans, but the New Orleans is a fairly lackluster cruiser at Tier 8. It's definitely the weakest cruiser at Tier 8, so there's just no hope in hell. And this player, I mean, there probably wasn't anything to do but to go in a reverse at the last minute. Anyway, so I wasn't too upset that I didn't get the Kraken after all, because it was a defeat, right? And if I had gotten the Kraken and it was still a defeat, that would have made it that much more worse. But luckily, I didn't get the Kraken. It was still a defeat, but it was still a good game. I mean, right up until the end, and the end really does serve as a good example of how it can all go wrong very, very quickly. Right up until the end, it was a pretty decent battle, not too shabby at all. We can, you know, see how some of it broke down, and I mean, I do walk away with 352,000 credits, which wasn't too bad at all. So pretty satisfied with it, other than the fact that it wasn't a victory and I wasn't able to, you know, tick that off the old list for the day on the Nurnberg. But anyway, that is today's video. I do hope you guys enjoyed it. Remember to leave any comments you have for me in the video comment section below. Love reading those and responding back to them. Remember to hit the old like button if you did like today's video. Remember to hit subscribe if you are not a subscriber. And as always, I do hope you enjoy the rest of your day.